Today is the second Sunday of Lent, which is dedicated to St. Gregory Palamas, and we have this particular reading of the Gospel, of the healing. You know, most of the Sunday Gospel readings that you hear are going to be either parables or miracles that Jesus did. And this particular miracle is unique because in this case, Jesus heals this man not because he asked for it or because of his faith, but because of the faith of his friends. And so I want from this particular story for us to pull out and meditate on two particular points. The first has to do with how Jesus heals people. And the second has to do with the involvement of other people in our healing process. If you look through the Gospels, you will find all cases where people were healed who had great faith, little faith, no faith, faith of their friends, or they didn't even ask for it at all. And so what you have demonstrated is the fact that there is no formula by which Jesus heals people, right? Sometimes he says what? He says, take up your bed and walk. Sometimes he says, you will be healed. Sometimes he says to people who come on behalf of someone else, he heals the person from a distance, right? Sometimes he lays hands on them. Sometimes he does things like makes spit in the mud and makes eyes for that man, right? And puts in new clay eyes in his where he was blind. Right? And so the point is that Jesus does whatever he wants. Right? And God does the same thing. So let us not be fooled to think that that there's some sort of formula, right, that we can follow that will get us what we want out of our spiritual life. Or some sort of, if we just follow the right rules and do all the right customs and kind of, check all our little boxes off, we'll get what we want from God. Jesus shows that this is totally ludicrous. And yet, for many people in our society, I think this is how we think. Whether we're conscious of this or not, we approach God in a very kind of formulaic way. That if we just do these X, Y, Z things, we'll get this thing that we think that we should be getting from God. And the reason that Jesus doesn't have any set patterns by how he heals people is intentional. To show us that there isn't some sort of formula, because that's just another form of legalism, right? Which focuses on the external things while neglecting our inner life. What's important in each one of these cases, right, of this person getting healing, is their heart. So the matter of the spiritual life and the healing, whether it's our physical healing or our spiritual healing, what's important is our heart and how we approach God. Not some sort of set formula for doing it. That's a relevant message then, and it's relevant today. Because we do the same thing. The point is that God doesn't want you to fulfill rules. He wants you. Right? Think about a healthy relationship, right? Like a healthy marriage or a good friendship. You don't say, well, I hung out with my friend, twice this month, right? So that's enough, right? I did all the friend things I'm supposed to do, right? Or you get in an argument with a friend and you say, look, I've done everything that I'm supposed to do as a friend, right? And so there's these sort of like external expectations, right, that we think that we've somehow fulfilled, and that somehow either gets us off the hook, right? And this is all sort of reducing relationships down to some sort of minimum expectations. And real love doesn't have minimum expectations, it just loves someone. That's the first lesson from today's reading. It's relevant because we're in the midst of a fast, and in a fast, right, we have the discipline of fasting, and that can easily become sort of a formula, right, or a kind of rule following where we abuse it and not understanding its purpose in our life. The second thing is that these men, these friends of this man who was crippled, right? I mean, can you imagine being there? I mean, at the end of the gospel reading, what does it say? It says, and all the people marveled and said, we have never seen such a thing, right? I mean, it's a good practice when you read the scriptures, whether you're listening to it in church or whether you're reading it daily at home, and you're reading what the day's reading is to kind of imagine yourself into the story. Like, well, what if I was one of the bystanders there watching this? And it's really an amazing scene that Jesus just happened to be passing through, and people found out that he's like in this house, right? And so they all like cram into his house, kind of uninvited, right? And push on him, and so there's this like impromptu preaching session that he's having with them. And these people have someone who's sick, and they can't get up to him because of the crowds. So they climb on the roof, rip a hole open in the roof, and lower their friend down on his bed, right? So that he can be healed. I mean, this is a ridiculous sight. And I love it that these friends are so creative, so tenacious, right? So loyal to their friend that they're willing to take risks and to look foolish so they can help their friend out. What a beautiful image of what friendship is. Because what friendship is about people. When someone's a good friend, they're a good friend because they make you a better person, right? They bring out the best qualities in you and urge you on to become everything that God's intended you to be. And in this case, these friends they go and they lower him down, right? And he's healed because of other people interceding for him on their behalf. And I think this is a great lesson: is that our salvation, right, our spiritual life, our well-being in this life and in the next, is not something that we can do totally on our own. We need other people, right? Our salvation requires other people to help us, especially and clearly sometimes we're so helpless that we need somebody else to do the work for us, right? Whether we're sick with a disease and we need people to help care for us in that time, right? Or we're in a particularly hard time of financial need and we need other people to help us in our community or our friends to help us financially. Or whether we're caught up in some sin or addiction or made some really great moral error, we need our friends there to kick us in the pants, to tell us when we're wrong, and also friends who are quick to forgive and are reliable in their forgiveness, right? This is what we need in our spiritual journey to become men and women of virtue. And so everyone has a role to play in your salvation, whether they're there because they set a good example for you, or they set a bad example of what not to be, right? Or whether they're there because they bring out the best virtues in you, right? They make you feel encouraged and emboldened, right? To become a more moral and virtuous person. Or maybe they're the kind of person that annoys you, right? And they bring out the worst things in you. Sometimes I'll say to my kids, you make me so angry, or you made me do this, right? We blame other people when we get really upset about something, right? As if somehow they transferred anger into us or something, right? But the truth is that whatever someone brings out of us, it was always there to begin with, right? If it's jealousy, if it's hatred or anger, or if it's sort of greediness, right, or unkindness or unforgiveness, those things were always there, right? Just buried. And some people have a knack, right, for kind of drawing out all those worst things in you that you're trying to bury. Even that is helpful if we have the right attitude, because it brings those things to the surface. When you're smelting metal, right, and you boil it up like gold or silver or something like that, there's something that rises to the surface which is called dross, right? Dross is all the other metals or the other impurities that rise up out of it when you put some heat to the metal, right? And then you can scrape it off the top. That's like our spiritual life. That's what that annoying person is in your life, right? They're the heat for you, right? That brings those things out. And you can take that opportunity and you can scrape off the top. You can take that as an opportunity to address those character flaws that are coming out of you, right? And make some sort of change in your life for it. So no matter whether they're a positive influence or a negative influence, everyone has a role to play in our salvation. And this is also shown in today's gospel reading. that we need other people. So we need to be there to help other people in their spiritual life, and we also need to be open and willing to receive help. Sometimes we're such a proud society, right? We never want to take help. We never want to take a handout. We never want to admit that we're sick or suffering or hurt or that we need something from somebody, right? We all got to be self-sufficient. If that man with palsy was self-sufficient, he would still be lying on the ground crippled. And it's the same thing for you and me. We've got to be willing to take help from other people. Admit it when we need it. And we as a church community need to be willing and quick to help someone else when they need help. To realize that part of our own salvation is the act of helping somebody else. That's what heals us. Helping someone else in their healing is the greatest way that you can be healed of your spiritual sicknesses that we all have. Glory to Jesus Christ.